New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
And hello again, dear ones. Reverend Robert behind the banner, pulling a rookie mistake for you there. I'm Rev Riz.
I'm Rev Z.
And this is New Thought Today on the New Thought Media Network. Happens every Tuesday afternoon at 2 p.m. Mountain Time. If you're watching with us live, please chat along, share your comments, hit the like button, hit the share button. If you're watching a rebroadcast at a later time, it all helps. Feel free to comment, chat along, hit the like button, hit the share button, whatever it is that makes you feel good while you're with us today. Good afternoon, dear Wayne. Always good to see you, sir. To critical mass and beyond. We might get there today, Wayne. We'll see. No promises that we'll get to critical mass there today, but we're trying to stay warm. Z, it seems like Colorado's about to catch up with the rest of the country.
Yes, it is. I just looked out the window and I'm getting the little flakes falling out of the sky right now.
Ooh.
So, they're saying we may get, depends on where you are, 7, 10, 12 in the city and front range. So we'll see what we get.
Exactly. We're finally catching up. We're going to get some snow yet this year. Could be the biggest of the season. So, you know what that means is it means we get to hunker down, stay warm, stay home, stay safe, and make more content like this and hang out with really cool and inspiring individuals.
Yeah.
You know, folks, that's what this program is all about, exploring how we can use this new thought philosophy to create a world that works better for everyone, and to wrangle the people that are doing that into the room with us. Now, today we've got a dear friend of ours, Reverend Patty Rumpza. She is from, now, and I want to make sure I lost my banner already. Look at that. I wanted to make sure I get the ministry right. It's the Golden Hearts Spiritual Communities is who you're with now. And we put up the mountain background for you today, Reverend Patty, because we know you were here in Colorado for a long time, and then you've moved on into these greater ideas, and we're going to hear a bit more about Golden Heart Spiritual Communities as we go today. Before we get there, though, say hi, let people know where you are and all that sort of stuff.
Hi, everybody. I am in Oklahoma City, and we get this storm tomorrow. So tomorrow morning, we are going to be iced down and sleet, and I think we're getting 8 inches of snow for Wednesday and Thursday. So yes, we're preparing for that because we don't get that much ice nor snow. But I'm in Oklahoma City, happy to be with all of you, my friends in Colorado.
It's good to have you with us. All right, well, we want to kick off today. Patty, you were with us at the Centers for Spiritual Living Convention last week, and in the prep time here before the show, we were chatting a little bit about some of our experiences there and some of the things that have been shared about there. And we'd love to hear, because I think there was a real clarion call on how this philosophy can serve moving forward in the world, not just remaining stagnant. And so we'd love to hear a little bit of your perspective on that, what you experienced and what you took away from the conference.
Okay, well, I think it's important to know I've been a part of our movement for 35 years, and I've been doing this for 21 years. So what inspired me is I am a believer in our global heart vision. I am a believer in creating a world that works for everyone. I am a believer that there's only one life, and that is to be experienced and lived and loved. and I love our philosophy. And having said all that, I have felt for many years that we're too silent, we're too quiet, we're too all of those things because we don't want to ruffle people's feathers. That's not my style, and I used to ruffle a lot of feathers. I always took the word that Reverend Dr. Michael Beckwith shared with us when I was in school of saying our job is to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. I took that to heart. So that has been my motto for all my years. However, organizationally and with communities, we wanted to be quiet, so tired of hearing the word political and all of those things. And I believe, so what inspired me was Reverend Dr. Edward Viljoen, who said, yes, we need to fulfill and live, that's my interpretation of the Global Heart Vision. We need to speak up. We need to re-examine our teachings and how we apply them and what we say, and look at which ones keep catching us up. And there's a few phrases that keep catching us up. So it's the first time in a long time I felt very inspired by us, because I do believe we have tools and techniques and information and a philosophy that can help usher birth in oneness on our planet. So I'm excited. So that was one of my takeaways. My other takeaway were those young ministers, those 30-some-year-olds, since I did youth camps and I did youth programs, and that's how I started in this. And when I heard, and I don't know their names, you may, when I heard them too, woo, I'm like, we're going to be okay. They're going to bring us old people into the current time. So things that it got me really fired up of why I was there. And I felt renewed and refreshed of that there's more people on board, that we have to start speaking up in really loud ways.
Yeah. Yes. Z, you've never been afraid of speaking up in loud ways.
Yeah, and there's the a closed mouth never gets fed. So if you don't open your mouth and say something about something, you're not going to get fed. So we need to move into that program of being fed and feeding others once we get whatever it is that we get and give to the community. So that's a great way to say, come on, everybody pitch in, let's go get it done.
Yeah. I think we're in a part, for me, it feels like we're in that moment of recognizing this has been a sacred disruption. Mm-hmm. And we're not immune from that disruption. The past 2 years have forced everyone to really take a deeper look at what's important, what do I value, what am I willing to serve, what am I no longer willing to tolerate. And that was one of the things I keep coming back to in that conference was our willingness to rewrite some of our sacred text, if you will, looking at this is where Ernest got to at that point in time in history, but wouldn't his thinking have evolved? And if it would have, I believe it could have come. And the shifting of the concept of tolerance and just tolerating is a huge part of that. So it feels like we are in that season of sacred discontent, sacred disruption to allow for something new.
Yeah, I think I absolutely agree with that. And I think some of us have been sacred disruptors for quite some time. So we have more joining us, because when Reverend Dr. Edward was talking about stuff, I realized there are just pieces of what we believe that I've just not used for years because they're not true. They don't play out as true when you're actually working with human beings. So I like the sacred, disruptors. And I also think it's of us having some awareness that if we don't really live exactly what we say we believe, we too will go away as the dinosaurs have. We too will. We can't just be a mouthpiece, because people don't need mouthpieces. So, we're going to die off.
So you mean to say we're going to become fossil fuel if we don't get our act together?
Yes. Exactly.
And that's key, because we are now moving into an era, cosmically, if you will. It's a time of change and evolution, in some cases revolution, of how systems and people are behaving. And then we have that whole humanitarian piece that has really come up big now, because we see some of the disparities and the shortages across the board. And so, I look at it saying that, hey, we have to have a evolution of humanity helping humanity. That's what all this chaos, I believe, is moving us toward. We have to get there so that we become our brother's keeper, and we're not just talking heads. And I'm willing to break my bread and have less tonight for you to have something tonight. And without that, we will continue to get separated, and before you know it, there'll be a whole bunch of islands, and everybody's starving, either physically, mentally, emotionally, or spiritually, and then we'll be in a real world of hurt.
I couldn't agree more. You stated that beautifully. Is our philosophy so good and so powerful, and it works so powerfully for some on that. And that's always been part of that disconnect, because we went off into spiritual arrogance at times without saying, hey, first you need to feed people. That's step one. Let's not do all the other stuff. Let's really open our heart to compassion. I was surprised at one of the things I heard there, because I really thought we had gotten rid of that 20 years ago, because in my bubble of the world I lived in, about, what's in your consciousness. I didn't even know that people use that phrase, but it was told to me so many times at convention. I'm like, oh, baby, back it up, So we've been missing and short on compassion and short on actually living oneness. We want to talk about it all day long, every day, have another class, have another discussion. But if you actually want to put people in the practice of it, then it's like, oh, I don't know what that is. So we're putting people in the practice. And it's messy. And it's not easy.
It's messy because we're not used to it.
Mm-hmm.
So many people in this movement have been allowed to sit back and play the card that says it's all in your consciousness. So you just got to do your work in consciousness. And the truth is, white or black, that is a very privileged perspective. I'm reminded of the phrase, it took a lot of money to keep Gandhi poor.
Yeah.
You've got to have means to sit in prayer all day long.
Yeah.
You've got to have means to be able to play this game and say, well, I'm just going to work on my own consciousness. No, because I have to go out into the world every day and go to work. I have to bump into people every day. I have to take my kids to school every day. I have to drop by. I got to wait in line at the pharmacy and all those things that unless you have as much money as they did to keep Gandhi poor, you're going to have to deal with the reality of people that don't believe like we do, that don't recognize the inherent oneness of life. And that's where I think we're really getting to do our work. We're being called.
Well, and because, there's a saying in Islam that goes, marriage is half your religion. And what it's really speaking to, being in relationship is half of your religion. And so if we're having religious experiences or religious practices, and it's not in relationship to other people, because that's where you work your stuff out. That's where you find out, if your stuff really is worth its salt. And so if we're just doing it on our own and just talking to ourselves and not bumping up against anything, we don't really know what we have, or if we have anything at all, as a matter of fact.
Right. Because I think it's, you're doing and both. I mean, we're always privileged or not privileged, money or not. We have to see what's going on in our inner world. I was very fortunate that I came through to this organization and philosophy by being in service. And service is the one way of serving others that allows you to do that. I served our teenagers, and, God knows I know you have children. that's an experience, because you got to keep it real, because they will let you know in a heartbeat, and so you do both. But we took out people, we took out the ability to be able to be with somebody who was in pain and still share, because it's and both. We have to teach our philosophy as it's and both. That's what, one of the that I've done, and and that's for me what they talked about is that, yes, we believe something greater is unfolding, and right now your life sucks, and right now things in our country absolutely suck, and they don't look how I want it to have, and it's both of those. And I will do my part, my inner work, my healing, and I'm going to heal by serving you, or by having a conversation with you, or at least by not being an ass, however you want to put it, at a minimum. I'm still trying to clean up my language a little bit, even though I know you're going to tell me, oh, it's fine, it's fine.
Well, my aunt used to say, sometimes you need to put a little salt on the food to make it taste good. So, you just put a little salt on it. That's all.
Yeah, this is where I feel the older part, because in classes, prior to recording, it was very real, and then it's like, oh Lord, you have me on video here. Let's keep it down. But we'll see what happens. No, I think it's an exciting time, for us, and I think for some it's going to be very difficult. It is already difficult, but hey, a lot of people in our country and the planet right now have it difficult. So let's just join in, and assist. So.
As we're sharing here, I'm struck. I don't know about the two of you, but I was brought up on that concept, and this is one of the great, I think, criticisms of spiritual philosophies, of positive thinking, and that's the concept of faking it until you make it. And I know that was very prevalent in this movement in earlier years. I don't know that I hear that as much anymore, and I personally have tried to I won't do that, and I don't encourage people to do that, and I don't teach people to do that, but I know that was part of the consciousness, part of the experience. And I often wonder if some of the people that have been around the longest got stuck in that and just kept faking it until they realized they didn't make it because they were faking it. And now they're stuck in a place where they can't admit that everything's just been a facade, that everything's just been faking it, and they're not really happy, or they're not really living the prosperous life they say they want to. I'll be straight up. I've been in this 20 years. I'm not a rich man. I don't preach a prosperity gospel, but I do practice the principles we teach, and I have to believe I'm in a better place now than I would have been had I continued on the path I was on.
Yeah.
But we don't sit around and just get a gold brick dropped in our hands.
No, what? Because of a conversation I had earlier today, and we were reflecting on it, my co-spiritual director, we had such different backgrounds coming into this philosophy. And I used to tell people I was a hot mess. I was broken as a human being. I was literally trying to stay alive when I found this in my 20s. And so what I learned is, by being in service, which I didn't know that was helpful. I just did it because that was part of my upbringing or background. And I would apply stuff, is that my life so vastly improved that I went from literally being suicidal to being mostly happy. And so my experience, and I think that it depends on which part of the country you're in this philosophy. I have been in the middle of the country and the South, and it's hard here. It's not like here we are in the South of like, hey, let's do this new thought, religious science stuff. And it's like, what cult are you a part of? So I think that for me, some of my perspective was different. But somebody reminded me of actually in Oklahoma City in the 90s, And I was in Prac 1 or something like that. And I got a cold. And I was walking down the hallway at the center or the church. And somebody walked right up to me and said to me, well, what do you think is in your consciousness that got you sick? And I, being me, said, and what do you think if I hit you's in your consciousness right now? I'm like, get out of my face. Because I knew, I'd only been in it 5 years. I knew like that was I have it. That was the stupidest statement that there was. Saying that to somebody, what was in your consciousness? Well, how the hell do I know? I didn't even know that I had anything to do about my life until 5 years ago, you know? And so we've come a long way, but Robert, people are stuck in it. You know why I believe people are stuck? Because in order to grow, it's uncomfortable.
Yes.
And you have to look at it. It was like, I asked myself, I've had a conversation, and maybe you guys have had it. I'm like, since when is the word of Ernest Holmes like the final word? Since when have we, put this in cement and stop saying, I'm like, what about that open at the top thing? What about that up there? And all of a sudden people were like, you can't challenge anything. I'm like, that's not what Ernest Holmes taught. No. So we're challenging it, and some don't want to, because it's easier not to.
Yeah, and I think, I agree with what you said, because often, I think once we've overcome our barriers, whatever they may be, physical, mentally, emotionally, or spiritually, we often forget about what we went through. And so, and we attest in some ways that it was all about me getting over these issues, right? And so we can be blinded that we understand the whole concept of consciousness and thought and words, but we also understand that it's a process, right? When we look at anything in the universe, it started from a process. The big old oak tree started with the process of the acorn. So and you could go on and on with those analogies, but we seem to forget that, and that causes this self-righteousness, this whatever you want to call it, to look down on someone and say, well, what are you thinking about? What's in your consciousness? Or how are you praying? Or what did your meditation practice look like? As opposed to saying, hey, let's work together, or let me share something with you, or you share something with me. This is a two-way street. I don't have all the answers. And that's what we have to get to. Religious studies is a conversation about ultimately experience. That's what Robert James said. And is that religious is a thing that has to be experienced. If you want to start philosophizing, now we're going into theology. Right. And this is not theology science. This is religious science.
And once you go to theology, you are stuck in your mind, which your mind is very useful. I mean, that's why sometimes science of the mind screws people up, because they think it's all an intellectual study. Right. Whereas Wayne, who I don't know, hi Wayne, but I like his, direct contact with spirit is illumination. We also need to recognize that sometimes if you can just get people into a container, into a room, into a setting, virtual or whatever, and have so much love present, then they can open up to the wisdom that is within them, their own spirit, and can be assisted. But many people have never had that safety, that love, that knowing, that ability to recognize that it's inside them. And so when we can do that, because before we took it on, well, we're going to tell you, I met somebody not that long ago, about 8 years ago, who came up and told me she only needed 15 minutes for a practitioner session. And I'm like, why? Why would you only need 15 minutes? Because that's all the time it took to let them know what was wrong with them. And I'm like, whoa. That's not at all what we do. know,
That's not how this works.
now granted, they're one of our colleagues. So that's, to me, is keeping it real, is that if we can give tools and if we can love so deeply and accept them and accept ourselves, accept ourselves, that we don't know what we're doing on most given days. I mean, we don't know, like when you're faced with stuff, but if we can bring that love, the divine, which is what I choose to call it, will guide us and direct it. And then you experience, and then you're willing to experience the other, because you can so recognize that you're one with them, that you've had that shared, and that even if you come from privilege and you've never known what it's like to have done anything, that's not a lot of humanity. People find us because they're hurting, usually. And that's true for all religions, not just us.
Right.
So keep it real.
I was in a recent conversation and someone shared to me, if you buy a rehab house, if you buy a house that you're going to rehab, that you're going to fix and flip, and you know that the basement was flooded, you better well make sure that every nook and cranny of that basement is dry and sealed before you start putting in new drywall, before you start putting in new windows, before you start painting the outside. You got to make sure that foundation is dry and sealed and solid. This, what's in your consciousness, assumes that somebody already has cleaned up their basement, that everything is solid and shipshape in the foundation. And as you're saying, Patty, oftentimes that is not the truth. And even those that may think they've got their stuff together, we find through spiritual community, through our classes, through the various interactions, through the opportunities to be together, that, oh, wait a minute, maybe my stuff ain't so tight in that corner over there.
And it's never going to be 100%. Every year, the branches on my tree in the front yard grow every year, and they drop more leaves on in my gutter and on my roof. But when winter comes around, if you looked at it, you think, okay, we're going to be good. And spring comes and it grows. So that same metaphor with us, we are continually growing and expanding, finding out new things about ourselves as we go through these winters of life, if you will, where we have problems and issues and things that bother us. But if we stay with the process, if we don't give up midstream, we'll come through it with new branches, new leaves, new fruit. And that's when we can begin to be a living example of what we're supposed to be teaching, is that there's never going to be a time where there is no problems. You either just left a problem, you're in a problem, or you're headed from a problem. And that's just the way it is.
What's so funny is in Dr. Pikra did it in her talk when she was at convention that made me laugh so hard. I don't think anyone ever told me, but again, from my background, my previous religion, where I came in at, so we're talking the early 90s. I thought that once I got it, what we were doing, like I didn't have any problems. That was my own interpretation of myself, that's what it was. And I was at somebody's house in Oklahoma City, actually. I lived here then too. And I was just in tears because I'd taken classes and I'm like, oh my God, I still have this stuff. And they said, why do you think you aren't going to have any problems? And I'm like, well, I meditate and I do treatment and I'm in classes and I'm in service. I'm like, I'm sure that I should get it. And they're like, no, you'll always have problems. You'll have more tools. You'll move through them better, usually. But that was my interpretation. And I think sometimes some of our friends, our colleagues, ministers, practitioners, other people, is they think like they know it, they got it all, and that if we address what's going on, that it somehow is less than, rather than what you said, Z. It's the process. We're always growing and evolving. Of my work, my growth never stops. I never stop doing inner healing work. I never stopped doing therapy, like with a real for real therapist, outside of here, who can also help get me a perspective. And people say, well, haven't you taken care of it by now? And I'm like, I'm still breathing and I'm still interacting with people and in our country. So no, I have not taken care of absolutely everything yet. But I think we bring all of those pieces together, and that's why I'm excited about now, is that I think we haven't even tapped into the possibility of what our philosophy, what our experience, what oneness being realized, revealed can be, because we haven't wholeheartedly tried it. And we've also forgotten a piece of it, which is, really emphasized on the healing. We got away from that too.
And that, folks, is going to be the subject of our second half of today's programming. So we're going to take a quick break here, give Reverend Patty and myself and Reverend Z a chance to take a quick sip of water, run to the bathroom maybe for a quick moment. We're going to take just a brief second or two to let you know a little bit more about some of the things that are coming up here on New Thought Media Network. And I want you to I want to introduce you to our newest programming. It started today. It's going to run for 28 days. Check this out real quick. That's right. Each and every day during the month of February, one of our ministers will come to you with a 3 to 5 minute inspiration and prayer for racial healing, putting our mouths where our feet are, where our hearts are this year for Black History Month. Reverend Elzia kicked off the program with today's video. It's out on our YouTube channels and all those other places. Please check that out. All right, I'm going to grab a drink of water myself, let you enjoy a little more information about New Thought Media Network. We'll be back with more of New Thought Today in just a minute. Stay tuned. back with more on New Thought today. I'm Rev Briz here with my co-host Rev Z and our great special guest, Reverend Patty Rumpza. And Patty, we've been having a great conversation, and we let the first segment run on super long because of that. That's always so much fun around here. But we want to make sure we hear more about what you're doing now and what's happening in your ministry. We've talked a lot today, folks, that yes, now is the time for change, and yes, there is an evolution, if you will, a revealing of a grander vision upon our movement. And as we promised in the promos for this video, we're here to take a look at how New Thought is going to influence and impact the future of humanity. And Patty, you've got something really important going on, and both LZ and I thought very powerful as well. So I'm going to stop and let you take over and tell us a little bit more what I'm supposed to be talking about here.
Okay, well, I want to just share is that I now do virtual ministry, and I do it with a co-director, Reverend Dr. Sandra Jackson. And so we are all about supporting ministers, supporting practitioners, supporting people. My passion is helping people live in oneness. And so I do coaching and other stuff. However, as an additional part of Golden Heart, what we are doing is we're doing sacred travel. And so each year we're having an educational trip and a fun trip. And so our educational trip that will take place on April 28th through May 1st is our Alabama Civil Rights Experience Tour. And where we're going is we're starting in Atlanta. We're going to Montgomery, Alabama, to the Legacy Museum, which is the history of slavery within our country. And it's from the beginning of slavery. It says from slavery to mass incarceration. Unbelievable museum, and we're also, as a part of it, is the Peace and Justice Memorial, which my shorthand word for that, it's the lynching memorial. And we are going to witness, to be a part of, to experience of what has happened in our country, where it's happened, where these roots come from. It just happens that yesterday, Brian Stevenson, his organization, Equal Justice Initiative, that created the museums, of what he said is that we must confront our history in order to heal. And I believe that we must confront our history in order to heal. We're going to be creating a very safe space for people to attend, because I know how difficult it is to attend. I have been there, and we're having some pre-conversations. We'll have some post-conversations, and our desire is that we're going to, in a very meaningful way, educate people, have them learn things that they didn't know, and to be witnessed, because we will be having white people with people of color, and it's a very different experience and super powerful. So we're doing that, and then we're also going to Selma to see the Voting Rights Museum, to see the Slavery and Civil Rights Museum, and to walk across Edmund Pettus Bridge. That's how we're ending the day in a very powerful way. And my goal always is for my background was, I was raised in a white community. I used to go to the big city next to us so I could be around diversity, because just being around all white people from a young age really wasn't my thing. So I found other people. And what I learned in that process from when I was a teenager is my Black friend had a much different experience on a whole lot of levels with police. Where George Floyd was, that was a place that I'm familiar with in Minneapolis. That's where my friends live, so I was very familiar with that. And I knew that. And because I've always had such close friends of color, I was aware of some of these things. Not saying that I know, because obviously I can't, I'm a white person. When I went to my previous in Colorado, I could tell well-meaning white people just didn't understand. They didn't get it, because it wasn't their experience. So I am passionate. Sandra is passionate about really bringing healing so we can do authentic, deep work around racism so we can reveal oneness. And that I believe foundationally, we have to understand and see and know what has factually, historically taken place within our country. And we're going to add, to it, obviously, prayer and growth. But that's happening in April. And I'm really excited to be doing it because it's such powerful work. And having said that, we haven't experienced as much of the excitement from some of our Science of Mind people because we would, as I've been told, because it's too uncomfortable. And I'm like, yeah, it is uncomfortable. And imagine if you're Black, how it felt for them too. So I believe, the last thing before I'm quiet for a moment, I believe that it is the responsibility of white people to heal the racism within our country because we have been so pivotal in forming it, not necessarily me personally, but you know what I mean, is that our background and that we must stand witness. And that's why going through the experience with people of color, I went through with Sandra. We had two different experiences taking place because of her life, her family, her roots. And if you only live in those states that you don't have to be real what it's like in the South, you need to come to the South and see what it's like on how things are. And so that's what I'm doing. We're doing this, and it's, again, our goal is to really put some action where it is. I know one of your fellow people, Reverend Michelle Wadley, is on a lot, Jersey girl.
Yeah.
Going with us, and she does that work. And so we want to say, hey, this is real. We can't pray it away. We can't talk it away. We can't pretend it away. We can't say it has nothing to do with us because it does. And I personally am tired of my friends and the children and all of those for all of these events to take place. And until we address it, my heart breaks too much for humanity. So that's what we're doing.
Woo. That's a lot. The experience that you just explained to me is one that I use often. It's a much different experience than to someone tell you what a mango tastes like as opposed to tasting the mango. And so having people go be involved and see places where history took place and see videos and pictures of history that is object, and watch the experiences of yourself and those around you is a powerful healing thing.
Yeah, I was there in May, and I thought I knew a fair amount of things. The Legacy Museum, I haven't been to the voting rights, but the Legacy Museum and the memorial that goes with it, the way they have it designed, it's very real. It's very experiential. Yes, they have a lot to read, so you can read it, but the words that are spoken are from slave narratives. You have jars of the dirt from people, where a family member was lynched. You have the narrative of people who are in prison. And then for me, while that was so powerful, and it was, but being in the memorial and seeing, if you haven't seen the large extreme slabs of where all the lynchings were done during this certain time of the country, and I could barely move during part of it because I felt like while I was walking through, I needed to read and honor and say a prayer for what had happened. And along the edges, they have stories of why somebody got lynched. And it's powerful and it's hard. And that's why so many of, and I'm keeping it real. So many of my white, brothers and sisters, they're like, oh, I can't do that. And I'm like, yes, you can, because we're still going to walk out of there.
And more importantly, we have to.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
We really have to. We keep saying this, but this is walking our talk.
Right.
Yes.
And uh, I, I was sharing before the program how often it seems that people just want to, pray it all away. I'll just sit in my meditation cushion and sit in my corner, and I will become enlightened by doing 23 hours of meditation a day, and these things won't actually have happened. We can erase all of that if we just get our conscious, and that's all bunk, because that these things happened, and yes, we're required to keep the honor, the memory, to allow for the healing, but the healing can't happen if I don't go see the doctor and do what's necessary. If I got something growing on my arm and I just keep saying, "Oh no, that's nothing. That's gonna go away next time. I won't be there next year," and then it kills you. So it's important work you're doing here, Dr. Pat.
And one of the things, especially again with the Legacy Museum, in combination with the memorial, is oftentimes when I would work with people, white people, it's the narrative. It's what happened with George Floyd, or what did he do, or what did he do, and this, and I didn't do this, and stuff, and and again, well-meaning, well-intentioned people, many of them, the ones that I'm dealing with, well-meaning, well-intentioned, is they just have no awareness because they have no they have no point of reference for things happening. And when you go through and you read the little plaque on the wall that says, the 15-year-old was lynched because he looked at a white girl, you literally lose your breath, and you hear story after story. And then when you go into the museum and you see a document from Nixon's, one of the people during the Nixon era, where they had in the paper, where you could see this is how mass incarceration of Black people started. They lay it out very clearly that if you're willing to be open, if you're willing to learn, you can see that this story, this narrative that we've been telling ourselves, is just a bunch of shit. Not the time I've ever said that, like I'm recorded too. It's just, what I mean is that it can pierce the veil of our ignorance, willing or unwilling, whatever you want to call, and to stop that narrative. Because I lived in Minnesota and I hung out with Black people, so I seen Black people get arrested by the police. I seen people get pulled over for no reason other than being Black. When I was in my teens, much less in my 20s. So I knew that wasn't true. But this gives an unbelievable, powerful experience of it. And then we get to see why voting rights is so important, and why, as I had a conversation with some white people the other day of, well, there's no problem here. And I'm like, no, because you're privileged and white. There's not a problem for you. But you'll see why it has been so pivotal for so many. So I'm an eternal optimist, and I believe that we have people who are willing to do the work, and I'm grateful that you're even let me speak about this, because and we're going to have circles. That's why we have Dr. Sandra and another minister of color who will be able to have a sacred, safe circle. Because white people don't want to know what Black people are saying when they're in this experience. We can't hang. We just can't handle it. As we as is necessary. Because we come from ignorance. And so we're going to have safe circles for us.
My experience is it also wouldn't be fair to our colleagues of color to force them into having to listen to white folk not get it again. Right? We've relied on our colleagues of color to try to teach us and try to support and try, and that, Z, I'm not going to speak for you, but I trust you've been there. I know you have. We've talked about it, that there's some fatigue in all of that, it's not separation to allow groups to process individually.
Yeah.
Because that allows us to bring back a richer experience to the whole.
Yeah. And it's like the high school lunchroom conversation. Why are all those black kids sitting together at the same table at lunchtime? No one ever says, why are all the white kids sitting at the lunch table together at lunchtime? And so there are certain things that certain groups of people have to handle and deal with themselves, and they are the best ones to teach it or highlight it to others, because I could never speak to anyone about climbing Mount Everest because I've never done it. Now I can tell you some stories about some books I read or some pictures I saw, but when you get up there and the air is thin and the weather is cold, I can't tell you nothing about that. And that's what you're going to have to deal with if you're going to get to the top of Mount Everest.
Right. Wayne has on here, it's okay to be white. It's absolutely, there's a reason we're all the mixtures that we are. For me, so I'm not trying to bash white people. I'm frustrated with white people at the moment, because we don't recognize the structures that are in place, and that's organizationally. It's the same reason, a bit off, why Black ministers haven't really been honored and revered within our own movement, and there's such a wealth of information. And when you are able to create, I have 20 plus year friendships with ministers of color that, because they know I'm curious, they know I'm interested, they know I do the work, they give me the grace that when I'm like, don't know what the hell's going on, or if I got it right, I can call them and have an honest conversation, because they know that I'm committed and I'm not trying to be a knucklehead, and it's this, same thing. They'll call me up to ask me, like, give me a translation for these, other folks like me. So it's important.
Z has talked to me off the cliff a few nights too. Yes.
Because, it's and the key part to that, or one of the key parts to that, is relationship. When we have these kind of events, we have these kinds of programs where people have to come and bear it all and deal with their own whatevers. And if you can do it honestly, authentically, and be open and non-judgmental as best you can form honest relationships where I can come to you or you can come to me and ask the difficult question. Because if you can't ask the difficult question, you're not going to get an answer. And if you don't have the answer, you're not going to know how to operate in that space.
Absolutely. And and it's important, it's with all the relationships that you have to know and understand. Again, I basically believe people are good. I basically believe people are kind and loving. And yet what we have in our country, from my point of view, is that we have a whole lot of white people who don't understand and don't know of. A number of years ago, I taught a class, and here I am in, a predominantly, extremely, 96% white community in the whole town, not just my community. And I asked people, how many of you have a friend of color? Oh, well, I know the person, and dear God, don't get me on that phrase of, yeah, I've got a friend. No, I'm like a real friend, like you've been to dinner with, been to your house, hung out with. What I experienced is that in parts of the country, people just have not had exposure to other people. Like you said, Zeke, relationships. Yeah. They just don't have the exposure. And so then it's like the automatic that you're doing a separation without challenging yourself. And we're lazy as humans. Yeah. We're lazy. We don't want to have to work. So,
and I often say this, is that, it's easy for a Black person to live, I'll say holistically, and I'll put air quotes by that, because we've had to live in both the Black world and the white world ever since we were born. Whereas our white colleagues, they've only had to live, unless they made a choice, to live only in the white world. So when you try to make a translation or you try to explain, you can't see it because you haven't experienced it. And so this trip will give some people that opportunity to, for a small moment, get a glimpse of what it's like to live in a black world, and then maybe try to switch back over to a white world and see how it feels. How do you navigate that? How do you release all those emotions and fears you may have picked up only for a moment, and think about someone who's done that for all their life?
Absolutely. That's absolutely. It's like, I know that this is just an opening, that then we, wherever they're going back to or whatever they're doing is going to spread out. So when they see a news story or when they see something taking place, they don't immediately jump onto the bandwagon, but they stop and they pause and they recognize that how I'm viewing it may not be accurate, and what I think happened is not accurate, and much less do the deeper level of healing work. And so
and most likely, and for all of us to wake up to the fact that I have no real understanding of what that person's lived experience is. So regardless of skin color, regardless of gender, regardless of age, I have no real concept of what got them to that experience, and what's in everybody's consciousness to bring it in there, right? Sorry, I had to go there, but we can't pretend we can't judge based on appearances that are presented to us, whether it's by the media we trust or the media we don't trust.
Right. And when we are part of a philosophy that says we're one, is that when anything happens to anyone else or any creature or any plant or any animal, we should feel it viscerally. Is that I shouldn't have to have had the experience that some did in order for me to not witness the pain within somebody else, to say, I must do something because I hurt, because there's only one thing going on, and that we are one within it, and of us coming together. So for me, it is about a lived experience of oneness. Yeah. And that's my thing, of having a lived experience.
And folks, we've got one more minute to be with you. So we're going to say thank you to our sponsors, come back and do a quick wrap up and get into our next programming. Please take a moment, help us to say thank you to all the people that make this possible.
Thank you, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, for your continued support. Thank you, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown Atlanta, for your monthly contribution. Thank you, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, for your monthly contribution. And please help us welcome Om Center for Spiritual Living in La Mesa, California. Thank you for your monthly donation. Thank you, Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, for your most generous donation. And a special thanks to Heckerland Foundation for your generous technology grant. And Suze Ajin, thank you for your very generous donation. And a big shout out to all our committed donors.
And you too, folks, can become a part of the New Thought Media Network family. Please just head over to the website, hit on donate, make it a monthly donation. Any amount will get your name on the video there, and say thank you to you with all of our programming. All right, before we go, thank you again, Reverend Patty, for being with us. Folks, remember, this is an important experience. We really want you to take a look at this Alabama Civil Rights Experience. The website's been going across your screen, and let's make sure we get it back up there for you. Golden Heart SC, or yes, goldenheartsc.org. Head on over there. You can connect with Reverend Patty. Are we a doctor yet, Patty?
No, that's Dr. Sandra. I'm just a Rev.
All right. We need to get you a doctorate, I guess, just so I don't have to say Reverend. Thank you so much for being with us. We're so grateful you've been here. We hope you'll come back and join us again. And do remember, we have that show called Ministers Talking Shed. You seem like a natural for it.
It has been such a joy, you two. Thank you so much. And I'd love to invite me whenever you need somebody to fill in, because I got lots of time now because I don't have a gig. Thank you. Much love to you. Peace and blessings.
Peace.
Peace.